On June 27, 1950, President Harry Truman announced that the United States was entering war in Korea in response to the North Korean invasion of South Korea, marking the entry of the United States into a brutal three-year war, costing the lives of nearly 40,000 U.S. soldiers. The United States felt especially compelled to join this war because of escalating tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union following World War II. Because the North Koreans supported a communist-style government, they received backing from the USSR and China, while the democratic South Koreans received support from the UN, the US, and the British, making this a proxy war for the Cold War. One of the most important battles of the Korean War was the nightmare at Chosin Reservoir, which I will be discussing in this video today. In late November of 1950, just 5 months after the US entered the Korean War, an end to the Korean War seemed imminent. The U.S. military and South Korean forces, as well as other military units from the United Nations, had pushed North Korean troops almost entirely back, with some units even reaching the Yalu River, which separated Korea from China. However, just as the United Nations launched what they had hoped to be their final offensive, hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers flooded Korea, devastating UN troops and turning the tide against the South. One U.S. Army unit, the X Corps, under command of MG Edward M. Almond, were nearly completely eradicated in the area surrounding Chosin Reservoir. On November 24, 1950, the 8th Army, under command of General Douglas MacArthur, made one of the worst military intelligence mistakes in Army history. They ignored reports of contact with the CCF, the Chinese military troops, and launched what they had hoped to be the war's final offensive. Despite the CCF attack, the scheduled X Corps offensive proceeded on November 27th. The 1st Marine Division would lead the attack, followed by Task Force McLean against the east side of Chosin. On November 27th, the X Corps offensive began in light of rugged terrain, extremely cold weather, and logistical problems, becoming the most ill-advised and unfortunate operation of the Korean War, as one historian put it. The Marines, who were already hesitant themselves to carry out the attack, only advanced 1,500 yards before they met stiff resistance and suffered heavy casualties. After dark, the CCF divisions carried out their own plan to ambush the task force, and the units, cut off from one another, fought desperately for their lives. The attack was lifted at dawn since the CCF feared American air attacks. Although the battalion suffered heavy casualties, MG Almond flew to the perimeter and demanded that Task Force McLean press on with the fight. Around midnight on November 29th, the CCF attacked again. The fighting was savage and often hand-to-hand, and around 2 a.m., McLean ordered the battalion to withdraw south to a neighboring battalion's perimeter. They reached their perimeter by dawn, only to find it under heavy attack. The Chinese had created a roadblock from the 3 out of 31 perimeter, and without communications, entering the perimeter would be an extremely hazardous operation. In the midst of the battle, McLean drove into a column of enemy troops he believed to be the overdue 2 out of 31 battalion, where he was shot and killed. Once inside, General Faith then assumed command and did his best to strengthen the perimeter. With nearly 500 troops wounded, the force was in no position to carry out the attack ordered by Almond, but Faith did not possess the authority to order withdrawal. Finally, by the order of MG Dave Barr, all units of the X Corps, including Task Force Faith now, were ordered to withdraw. However, the only support the Corps would receive would be air support, and the task force was burdened with carrying wounded soldiers, making the withdrawal process much more difficult. Carrying 600 wounded men on 30 trucks, the task force set off with a twin 40mm gun leading the way. Immediately, they came under fire. After calling in air support, the lead plane's napalm canisters hit the front of the column, engulfing several U.S. soldiers in flames and creating general panic throughout the task force. Heavy fire from the enemy flanks killed many of the wounded inside the trucks. The fire grew more intense as the column reached Hill 1221, which dominated the surrounding area. After charging up the hill, the task force ran into another block at a hairpin turn. Faith led an assault that cleared the enemy from it, but was struck by enemy grenade fragments and mortally wounded. Once Faith lost command, the command structure of his task force collapsed and ceased to exist. Faith received the Medal of Honor posthumously for his bravery. During the night of the 1st and 2nd December, survivors finally reached Marine lines. Only 1,000 total survivors reached Marine lines, and only 385 could be considered able-bodied. Though initially thought to be an embarrassment to the American Army, closer examination proved the actions of Task Force McLean to have blocked the Chinese along the eastern side of Chosin for 5 days and allowed Marines to push through along the west side. Task Force McLean/Faith was awarded a Presidential Unit Citation in September of 1999. I discussed this topic for multiple reasons. First, I believe that the brutality of the Korean War should be discussed much more than it is currently. I have taken multiple advanced history courses in my life, and I have yet to be in one that has showcased the horror that these men went through, while other wars are discussed in much further detail. I also believe that it is important to know the details about what family members who are veterans have gone through. My great-grandfather received the Purple Heart through his bravery in this battle and was so mentally scarred by it that nobody knows exactly what happened to him. This being said, it was incredible to learn more about what his experience may have been like, and I hope that more people are inspired by this video to research their loved ones' personal history.